Hi all, I'm Aby Joseph. In this video, let us look at how we can access our Azure resources using Azure REST APIs. We'll achieve this by creating service principals in Azure Active Directory to authenticate the Azure management endpoint. Here, as an example, we have an Azure resource group that we need to access via the Azure REST API. For this, first we'll register an application in Azure Active Directory. When we register an application in Azure AD, a service principal object is created, which serves as the identity of the application. The service principal will then provide us the means to authenticate and authorize access to Azure resources, in our case via the Azure REST APIs. Along with this, we'll also need to generate a client ID and a client secret for the application that we have registered. Once we have the service principal in place, we will provide access to the resource group via the service principal object. We will see how to do this by assigning a role to the service principal using RBAC and then applying that role to the resource that we want to access via the REST API. Also, we will quickly see how we can achieve all the previous steps via single command using Azure CLI without navigating through the portal. After that, we'll test our access to the resource by using Postman as a REST client to generate an access token, using which we can access the Azure management endpoints. Finally, we'll explore some common issues that can occur during the setup and how we can troubleshoot them. To get started, in our Azure portal, let's go ahead and search for Azure Active Directory or Azure AD. First, we'll need to register an application. So let's go to Add, App Registration. Let's give it a suitable name and hit Register. There are 4 values that we need to note: the tenant ID, the subscription ID, the client ID, and the client secret. We can get the subscription ID by going back into Azure, Subscriptions, and within the overview page, we can get the subscription ID. In order to get the other details, let's go back into Azure AD again. Let's open up the application that we have just registered. Within this page, we'll be able to get the application ID or the client ID, and we can also get the tenant ID. We do not yet have a client secret, so let's go ahead and generate one. We can do this by going into Certificates and Secrets, New Client Secret. Let's enter a suitable client secret name. I'll keep it to a minimum and hit on Add. And within this page, we now have our client secret displayed. One thing to bear in mind is that if you navigate away from this page, this client secret value will not be displayed again. So do copy it and store it in a secure location. Typically, we store it in an Azure Key Vault, but for this demo, I'll keep it in my sticky notes. Now back in the portal, let's assume that this is a resource group that we want to access via the REST API. It also does have a virtual network that I've deployed that doesn't do anything at all. We need to give the resource group a role-based access control based on the service principal object. In this case, it will be at the resource group level. For this, let's open the resource group and go to Access Control IAM, Add Role Assignment. Ideally, we should be giving it access with the least amount of privilege to get the job done, but I'm going ahead and giving it a contributor level access to demo. So let's go ahead and select contributor. Next, ensure that user group or service principal is selected. Select members. By default, the service principal will not be displayed. We need to search for it. So let's go ahead and search for it. REST, select, and select. Let's hit next. And as you can see, the scope is now defined at the resource group level. Review this and review and assign. To ensure this is indeed correctly applied, back in the same page, let's go to role assignments. And within this page, we can see that the service principal does have a contributor level access to this resource group. As a quick recap, we registered an application in Azure AD, generated a client ID and a client secret, and also did a role assignment to the resource group via the service principal object, all done via the Azure portal. We can do all the same steps via Azure CLI in a single line as well, without having to navigate through the portal. Back in the portal, open Azure Cloud Shell. We can use Azure CLI as well. Copy the command that you see on the screen and replace the values where appropriate. I've already done this, so I'm going ahead and pasting it. Here we can see that the name of the service principal is mentioned here, and also the name of the resource group. And it also does have the contributor level access that we're planning to give. So let me go ahead and press enter. And there we have it. We have the subscription ID, we have the tenant ID, we have the client ID, and we have even got the client secret generated all in one single command. In addition to that, it has also assigned the contributor level access to that particular resource group that we mentioned. So let's go ahead and ensure that this is actually created. There was only one before. Now, if we go to refresh, we also have got the one that we have generated via the CLI. If that seemed much easier and a helpful tip, do consider giving this video a thumbs up. I will also add the command down in the description. We have now done all the prerequisite setup required. Let's test if we can access the Azure Management API endpoint and update a resource group. For this, we need to first get the Auth token by hitting Microsoft Azure's Auth Token endpoint. Let's go back to our Azure AD and open the application that we had registered before. So let's go to Applications. This is the application that we had registered. Go to Endpoints. And in this page, we can see that we have the token endpoint listed, and do ensure that we are selecting the token endpoint. Within the URL, I have my tenant ID that is listed. You will have your tenant ID that would be displayed here. Do copy this URL. Let us now open Postman to send a request and get the authorization token. Let's create a new request. Ensure that this is changed to post. Paste the URL that we had copied before, that is the token endpoint. Go to the body tab. Ensure that the URL encoded is selected. And for key, we need to type the grant type. The grant type would be client_credentials. The next one would be client ID. So client ID. I already have my client ID defined as a variable within Postman. So the next one would be client secret. Again, the client secret is also defined as a variable within Postman. So I'll use the same one. There is also one more key that we need to add, which is the resource. And the value would be the management endpoint. Let's go ahead and send the request. And we have got the access token within the response. Note that there is also an expiry time. This is the token that we need to send to the next endpoint. So let's create a copy of this. Now let's try getting the list of all the resources that are present in a resource group via Azure REST API. Azure does have detailed documentation on the endpoints and the various operations it supports and payload requests. This is one such documentation in relation to resources. If you navigate down the list, we have list by resource group. If you were to open it, this endpoint does require a subscription ID, and we need to pass in the name of the resource group name, whose resources we want to list. So let's copy this. This is a GET request. So let's go back to Postman. Create plus. This already GET. So let's paste it. We need the subscription ID. So within my environment variables, I've already given the subscription ID of my Azure. So let me go to Environments tab, Azure Dev. And within that, I have listed all the different variables already. So subscription ID is the name of the variable. Let me go back and replace it. So that is now picked up as a variable. We need the name of the resource group. This is the name of the resource group that we had created. That does have a VNet within it. I've already listed the name of the resource group. So copy the name of the variable. Get resource group. If you were to send a request directly, it wouldn't work because we have not provided the auth token. So let's go back to the previous endpoint, the auth token endpoint, where we had the access token. Let's copy this again. We only need the value of the access token. So we have copied this. Let's go to the get endpoint, authorization. It is an auth 2.0. So we have selected auth 2.0, and within the token, let's paste the token. Let's now send the request. And we have got the response back as a 200 OK, meaning we were able to authenticate and access the details. And within it, we have got the name of the VNet that is present within that resource group. Let us now try another example and try updating the tags of a resource group. This was the documentation for the resources. So let's go to resource groups now, overview, and we need to create or update. We are trying to update the tags. So let's go to this URL and copy this endpoint. Back in Postman, let's create a new request. Note that this was a put request. So let's select put. paste the URL. Let me substitute the values with the details that I have. So that would be subscription. This being a put request, it would require a body to be sent. So let me go to the body tab, raw, JSON. Let me paste a sample payload. Here I've given within tags to update a key value pair. The key is honor and the value is Aby Joseph. So sent, it wouldn't work as expected because we have not given the auth token to authorize. So let me go back to the previous endpoint, the auth endpoint. Let me generate a new set of token. I've got the token, so let me copy it now. Going back to the put request tab, authorization, auth 2.0, and let me pass in the token. And now if I were to send, and now we have got a response back mentioning 200 OK, and within the response I can see that the tag was updated and it was succeeded. Now let me confirm by going back to the portal, resource groups. This was the resource that we asked to update. So expanding the essentials tab, we can see that the tag is now updated. So as an exercise, let's try to add another tag to this. So I will go back to the same port, body, and I will try to add another tag. Environment would be, let's say it's a QA environment. And let's send it. We have got a 200 OK success response and an additional tag was added and it was succeeded. Let us go back to the portal and ensure this was actually done. So back in the portal, resource groups. This is the resource group that we asked to update the tag. So let's open it. Essentials, and we can see a second tag is now added via the REST API. Next, we will see some common issues that we can encounter and how we can resolve them. The authorization failed is a common issue that we are likely to hit if we have not done the role assignment correctly. So in this example, we have tried to send a request and we have got the authorization failed issue. And it says that this particular client does not have enough access or authorization to perform the action right over the scope. So in order to fix this, let's go back to our portal and see if the access control is correctly provided. So in order to do that, let's go to access control, role assignment. And if we look, there is no service principal that is assigned. In order to fix this, let's go to add. This did have a role assignment of the service principal, but in order to reproduce the issue, I had removed it. So let me go ahead and add it back. Add role assignment. Let me give it a contributor access back again. Next, user group, select the member. It is REST. So select it, review and assign it back. It is now listed within the role assignment tab, meaning it should now have access. So let me go back to Postman. I need to regenerate the authorization token. So let me go to the post endpoint, the token endpoint, send a request again. I've got a new set of token. So copy this. This was the issue before. So let me give the new token again. And now we are able to access it back again. Another common issue is the invalid client error. Even though the error does mention that the client is invalid, it could be that the client ID or the client secret that we passed in the header is not exactly right. So in order to fix this, we have to ensure that the correct client ID and the client secret is provided. So I had introduced some additional characters into the client secret to reproduce this issue. So let me go ahead and fix that now. Back into my environments tab. I had added 3 additional characters. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And save. Let me go back to the token endpoint and now this should be fixed. Hitting send. And I got a successful response back with the authorization token. And that's it for our first video. I hope you enjoyed watching and learned something new. If you did, consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel. I'm just getting started, so if you have any feedback or suggestions, do let me know in the comments. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.